The Galactic Conclave had a rule. An unspoken one, but a rule nonetheless. You do not poke the humans twice. Nobody wrote it down. Nobody had to. Because the species that did poke them twice, well, they were not around to write anything down anymore. My name is Vrox, Senior Intelligence Analyst for the Tharrvian Collective. And I am about to tell you the story of the day Earth sent a message to every single civilization in the known galaxy. Not a diplomatic letter, not a polite request, not even a strongly worded formal complaint. No, they sent a warning, recorded on a single frequency that punched through every communication barrier, every encrypted channel, every private military network in the galaxy, like someone kicking open a door that you thought was very securely locked. The message was 14 seconds long. 14 seconds. We replayed it 472 times in the conclave chamber, just to make sure we had heard it correctly. We had. Let me give you some background. 3 years before that message arrived, the Drakorvian expansion fleet decided, with what I can only describe as spectacular overconfidence, to raid the outer colonies of Earth's solar frontier. Now, to be fair, on paper it looked like a reasonable idea. The humans had no formal alliance with any major power at that point. They had 17 colony ships, a handful of defensive platforms, and what our intelligence described as, quote, a military force of moderate capability and limited strategic reach. Whoever wrote that report has since been reassigned to monitoring asteroid movements in Sector 9, alone, with no communication privileges. The Drakorvians sent 43 warships. 43. The kind of fleet that makes planets nervous just by existing in their star system. Their commander, a decorated officer named General Bruvak, personally transmitted a surrender demand to the human colonies. He gave them 6 hours to comply. The humans took 4 of those hours to respond. We later learned they spent the first 3 hours doing something called a meeting. Apparently they gather all their important people into one room, talk very loudly over each other for an extended period, argue about who is in charge, argue about the argument, drink a beverage called coffee in alarming quantities, and then somehow through a process that no alien species has successfully reverse-engineered, arrive at a unified decision. Terrifying, honestly. Their response to General Bruvak was brief. They said, and I am quoting directly from the translated transcript, "We are going to give you exactly one opportunity to leave. This is that opportunity." Bruvak laughed. His senior officers laughed. The communications officer laughed so hard he accidentally transmitted that laughter back to the human fleet. The humans did not laugh. What they did instead was deploy something called the Meridian Protocol. We still do not fully understand how it works. Our best scientists have spent 2 years examining the wreckage, and they continue to look at each other with expressions that I can only describe as deeply uncomfortable. What we do know is this. Within 9 hours of that transmission, 31 of the 43 Drakorvian warships were gone. Not disabled, not captured. Gone. The remaining 12 retreated at speeds that our engineers said were technically not possible for their ship class. General Bruvak was among the 12 who ran. He submitted his resignation the following morning. Now here is where it gets interesting. The Drakorvians, to their credit, went quiet after that, licked their wounds, kept their heads down. Nobody from the conclave said anything officially, because nobody wanted to be the species that raised their hand and said, "Yes, hello. Can we please discuss what the humans just did to an entire fleet?" We all pretended it was a regional incident. We moved on. And then, 8 months later, a faction within the Drokkari Union, a smaller but ambitious empire on the edge of conclave territory, decided that the Drakorvian failure was simply a matter of poor strategy. That the humans had gotten lucky. That with the right approach, the right numbers, the right timing, it could be done differently. I want to be very clear about something. I personally submitted a 40-page intelligence report explaining in detail with charts, with data, with historical precedent, and with 3 separate appendices exactly why this was a catastrophically bad idea. Nobody read it. I know nobody read it because the Drokkari fleet launched 6 weeks later. 208 ships. 208. They were so confident that they sent a live transmission to the Conclave observation channels, a broadcast, so we could all watch what they were calling, and this is real, the correction of the human miscalculation. I poured myself a very large drink and watched from my office. What happened next took 11 hours. 11 hours that aged me considerably. I am told I now look like my grandfather, which is not a compliment in Tharrvian culture, because my grandfather looked like a pile of old boots. The Drokkari fleet did not succeed. What remained of it scattered across 4-star systems, broadcasting distress signals in every direction. The human defense force, which was smaller, outnumbered, and operating this time without the element of surprise, dismantled that fleet with a precision that made our military analysts stop using words altogether and simply sit in silence. And that is when Earth sent the message. 14 seconds. Every channel, every frequency, every corner of the galaxy. The voice was calm, almost polite, the kind of calm that is somehow much worse than anger. It said, "To every civilization receiving this transmission, we have now been attacked twice. We responded both times. There will not be a third time in the same sense. If a third fleet enters our space with hostile intent, we will not simply defend, we will respond at the source. We want to be very clear. This is not a threat. Threats imply uncertainty. This is a schedule." Then it ended. 14 seconds. The conclave chamber was so quiet you could hear the ventilation systems breathing. Someone, I will not say who because she is my supervisor, whispered. They said schedule. Yes, yes they did. After the message, nobody spoke for a long time. And I mean that literally. The Galactic Conclave, an organization that has 17 different species represented, species who argue about the temperature of meeting rooms, who file formal complaints about the font size used in diplomatic correspondence, who once held a 3-week summit debate about the correct plural form of the word alliance, went completely, utterly, historically silent. For 6 days. 6 days of silence from the most talkative collection of civilizations in the known galaxy. That alone should have been recorded as a significant cosmic event. I spent those 6 days rereading my 40-page report. The one nobody had read before the Drokkari fleet launched. I added a cover page. Bold letters. Large font. It said, "I told you." My supervisor told me to remove it. I did not remove it. On the 7th day, the emergency session began. Every ambassador, every military delegate, every intelligence representative from every conclave member species was present. Some attended in person, some via long-range holographic link. One species, the Veloyun, who are notoriously anxious, attended via a pre-recorded message because their ambassador had requested a leave of absence for what was officially described as stress recovery. Understandable. Honestly. The session was supposed to be structured. There was an agenda. There were time limits for each speaker. There was a moderator, a very composed Filvari diplomat named Ambassador Dren, who had successfully mediated 14 interstellar disputes over a career spanning 40 years. Ambassador Dren lasted about 9 minutes before abandoning the agenda entirely, because the moment the session opened, the Drokkari representative, a sharp-featured official named Councilor Parax, stood up and said something that made the entire room turn and stare at him, like he had just announced he was planning to sneeze on the prime exhibit. He said, "The humans are bluffing." Now I want to give Councilor Parax some credit. It takes a particular kind of confidence to say that sentence in a room full of people who had all just watched 208 Drokkari ships get methodically taken apart like old furniture. That confidence, I have to say, is impressive. Wrong. Dangerously wrong. Cosmically wrong. But impressive. Ambassador Dren stared at him for 4 full seconds before responding. She said, "Councilor, with the deepest respect this chamber can offer, please sit down." Parax did not sit down. He argued. He presented a theory, a genuinely detailed theory, about how the human response had been staged, that the Meridian protocol was exaggerated, that the numbers were manipulated, that Earth was running a sophisticated psychological campaign designed to project power they did not actually possess. And here is the thing. He was not entirely stupid. Parts of his argument were logical. Parts of it were even compelling. But logic, in this particular situation, was not the point. The point was the 14 seconds. The point was the word schedule. I raised my hand. Dren acknowledged me. I stood up and said only this, Councilor Parax. Before we debate whether the humans are bluffing, I would like to ask a simple question. Who in this room is willing to be the one that tests it? Silence. Complete, total, beautiful silence. Parax opened his mouth, closed it, sat down. I sat down too, feeling better than I had in weeks. The session continued for 3 days. What emerged from it was something the Conclave had never actually produced before in its 400-year history. A unanimous document. Every species, every signature, every seal. It was called the Solara Accord, named after Earth's star, which I personally found to be a very pointed choice of name that nobody openly acknowledged but everyone quietly noticed. The Accord had 3 parts. The first part formally recognized Earth and its colonies as a protected sovereign territory under Conclave law, meaning any unprovoked military action against human space would be treated as an action against the entire Conclave. This was designed to give Earth an official shield. What nobody said out loud, but everyone understood, was that it was also designed to give the rest of us an official reason to step in before the humans decided to make good on their schedule. The second part established a direct communication channel between Earth's governing council and the Conclave High Chamber. Open, permanent, no delays, no filtering through intermediary diplomats. If a human representative wanted to speak to the Conclave directly, they could do it within minutes. The third part was, officially, described as a mutual exchange of defensive intelligence. Unofficially, and I know this because I helped draft the language, it was us asking the humans very politely to please tell us if anyone was planning to do something stupid in their direction before they did it, so we could intervene before things reached the scheduled portion of events. The humans reviewed the Accord for 2 weeks. Then they sent back a single amended line, added at the very end of the document. It read, Earth accepts these terms. We note that acceptance does not imply the suspension of our previously stated position regarding unprovoked aggression. The schedule remains in effect. Ambassador Dren read that line aloud in the ratification chamber. She then set the document down, folded her hands, and stared at the ceiling for a long moment before saying, Sign it. Everyone. Now. No discussion. Every species signed it within the hour. That is, for reference, the fastest unanimous ratification in Conclave history by a margin of 3 weeks. I attended the formal ceremony when Earth's first official ambassador arrived at the Conclave station. Her name was Councilor Mara Solis. She was shorter than most species expected. Calm. Professionally dressed. She smiled pleasantly at everyone she met. I watched species who command fleets of hundreds of warships greet her with the same cautious energy you use when you are very aware of where the exits are. She gave a short speech. She thanked the Conclave for the Accord. She expressed genuine interest in building lasting relationships across species. She said Earth looked forward to being a cooperative and constructive member of the galactic community. Then she paused, just briefly, and she said, We also hope this is the last time we need to clarify our position on the matter of unsolicited military visits. We really do prefer the diplomatic route. It involves less paperwork for everyone. The room laughed, nervously, the way you laugh when something is funny and also slightly terrifying simultaneously. I laughed too, genuinely, because she was right, and because somewhere in a Drokkari government archive, there was still a live broadcast recording of their fleet launching with full confidence and celebration. I heard they deleted it. Smart move. I still have a copy. The galaxy learned something that year, something it should have perhaps considered before sending 43 ships, and certainly before sending 208. Humans do not bluff. They do not escalate for drama. They do not send warnings for theater. They speak calmly. They mean exactly what they say. And when they tell you something is a schedule rather than a threat, the correct and only reasonable response is to clear your calendar and stay home. The Drakorvians learned it the hard way. The The Drokkari learned it the harder way. The rest of us learned it by watching, which, if I am being entirely open about this, was the option that was available the whole time. My 40-page report is now required reading for every intelligence officer in the Tharrvian collective. The cover page is still there. Nobody asked me to remove it again.